The problem is that both sides are basically organized crime, which is something I've tried to write a lot about. I've written 2 books on the subject. In a sense, they are both run by the same gang. They both want to turn the United States into a neo-feudal society and take away our freedom and money. People's freedoms and constitutional rights are taken away when countries are at war all the time, like during World Wars I and II. This is part of the transfer of wealth that takes away individual freedoms. Japanese Americans went through it during World War II. During the First World War, it was about the same size. People who were not German Americans were sent out to gather people and accuse them of being enemies of the state because they were German Americans during World War I. There is a lot of lost history that I think should be looked at again, because this is what governments do all the time when they say, there's a national emergency with what looks like being a very important presidential race coming up in the United States. Webb, a researcher and journalist, says that the American voter doesn't know that they are voting for the same plan, no matter who wins in November 2024 between Biden and Trump. Webb talked about the plan and what the deep state really means in an interview with Freedom of Speech. Webb says that some of the most powerful people in the country are in the private sector. They control the story and structure of the country through private companies that work with the government. She says that the main goal of this plan is to steal people's money, mostly by keeping a close eye on them and using the tried and true method of divide and conquer. Webb says that events from World Wars I and I that we have forgotten about can give us a rough idea of how these strategies work. Along with these well-known plans, progress in technology, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, artificial intelligence AI, and the media have made the situation even scarier. Even with these problems, Webb thinks there is a way to fight the agenda, but people need to wake up and see what's really going on. Be making this smart move to the business sector so that they can be seen as heroes. It's going to be easy for them to shut down the parts of the public sector that are causing problems because everyone knows the truth and no longer trusts the mass media or the national security state. How do you keep doing business the same way you always do it and make people think they've won? They want to do this because people who think they have won are more likely to follow the rules. The people they want to follow the rules the most are gun users in the United States. So how do you get most gun users in the US to follow the rules more? You make them believe they won by putting someone in the White House who you've sold to them as their guy. And they did. For example, Trump decided to lock down the country during Operation Warp Speed while he was president. There is a crazy amount of government debt that was printed. Steve Mnuchin, the Federal Reserve, and all of these other people just made a crazy amount of money. It was passed around for BlackRock to give out. Plus, Larry Fink gave Trump advice and helped him handle his money before he became president. They are very close. And, that's just favoritism. Because of what happened during COVID, we now have to deal with the effects of inflation. And all of that was really kept up by the Biden administration so people would think that Trump would be different when he got in. I still think it's stupid. And I think Republicans who can't see that have been affected by the same kind of psyop that progressives and left-leaning people were during Obama's term. These people stood up for what Obama was doing in his second term, even when it came out that Citigroup picked his whole cabinet during the worst part of the U.S. financial crisis and that he started war after war while Hillary Clinton ran the State Department. People thought, well, if people would just work with Obama, or else his government is full of traitors, that is, it's the same kind of talk that people used to say sorry for Trump. To be honest, I believe the only way out of this is for people to understand that both parties are working together to force a very dangerous plan on the United States. A lot of people have been created to try to gain your trust so that you'll agree to these rules. There are other areas where this is happening as well. They do it in the media too, since they know that most people no longer trust established media. So they're making what some people call mainstream alternative media that is being used to push these ideas on the market. Because of this, Brett Weinstein was on Tucker Carlson and said, "We need a smart wall." Colonel Douglas McGregor has said that we need a smart wall. I think he was an advisor to President Trump during his first term. Trump's lawyer and a top advisor to his super PAC are saying that we need digital ID to vote. It is very sneaky and dangerous to try to get people to join a system that they don't want because they fought against it during COVID. And traditionally, these are the people who are most afraid of losing their individual freedoms. They are constantly being sold and bombarded with all of these numbers and talking points from all sides of the political spectrum in order to get people to agree to follow this system once it goes into effect. But I think the good thing about this is that they are spending so much time and money trying to get our permission for these programs. It means they will fail if we don't follow through. Just think about what happened in 2008 during the U.S. financial meltdown. Remember when people from both sides of the political spectrum worked together to protest against Iraq during Occupy Wall Street? Now think about how far we've fallen and everything that has happened to try to control people's thoughts to get us to where we are now. I don't think I'm the best person to do it, but I do think we need to look at how we got so far away from that, and how we got to a place where people who say they care about freedom, other people, and what's best for the common good are willing to give in to authoritarianism whenever their emotional buttons are pushed. That's very dangerous stuff. As we saw in Latin America in the 1980s, bad things happen when those kinds of countries take over. A good number of people already know that I live in Chile. There was a regime here that was backed by the US CIA. Some people on the American right even praise it and make memes about people being thrown out of planes. For example, I would say that people don't know what it was really like here. Also, I didn't live here back then, of course. But I don't know. I've learned enough and heard enough stories from Chileans on the left and the right to know that it wasn't good. I mean, you could have been. You know, some people didn't like their neighbor and said their neighbor was a communist when they weren't, and that neighbor was taken away and never seen again, and other things like that. If we put this kind of system in place, it will be used to go after people on the right just as much as people on the left, and the same goes for the other way around. Anyone who gets in the way of this authoritarian machine will be killed, and we can't let that happen. And I really hope that people figure out that this is a trick being used against us. It's also a bad thing that all kinds of things get thrown at people during election years. I think it's a really big test for the people of the United States. Also, I really hope that people see through it and have at least learned something from the COVID era. But, it's not always clear. But once more, I believe that online speech is being influenced in ways that have never been seen before. Because of COVID, a lot of our speech, especially political speech, had to happen online. This also went for social speech. Unplugging and talking to people in your neighborhood and in real life will show you that you share a lot of things in common. People agree with you on many things and disagree with you on many things. A lot of this anger, hate, and separation is happening in ways that have never been seen before, online. You also have a lot of our live chat. Take Twitter as an example. A person who used to work as a big contractor for the military and intelligence services took it over and now runs it. A lot of money has been spent by the military to control people on social media for the benefit of the so-called deep state. In fact, the Air Force paid, I think, more than $100 million in 2014 to find out how to use social media to direct people like drones and to make algorithms for that purpose. That says a lot. I believe that the more information we have, the better. It's good to stay aware, but we need to protect ourselves from this never-before-seen wave of psyops. And I think one way to do that is to understand the bigger policy goals that are part of Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, this digital ID and biometric entry-exit system is a key part of those goals. It won't work at all without digital ID. But if we let digital IDs work, digital money from both state banks and the private sector will come in and be able to be programmed and watched. People who used to be against digital ID, like Ryan DeSantis, are now in favor of it. He's against CBDC, but he'll support money that can be programmed and tracked if it comes from JP Morgan instead of